I think we're looking again at a lost technology. And it was this ancient apocalypse 12,800 years ago that wiped that.
Mainstream archaeology maintains that Pharaoh Khufu built the Great Pyramid using copper tools, a workforce of roughly 20,000 people and only 20 years of construction. That is the story repeated across generations. But there is a problem. Even today, no complete body of evidence explains exactly how millions of stone blocks were quarried, transported, and fitted together with such astonishing precision. Countless theories have emerged to fill that gap. Yet after decades of debate, the mystery remains without a final answer. Now, a man named Graham Hancock believes that the controversy may finally be approaching its end. For more than 30 years, he has traveled across continents, examined ancient sites, studied geological data, compared forgotten maps, and followed patterns buried beneath thousands of years of accepted history. What Hancock claims to have discovered may point directly to the people who truly stood behind the Great Pyramid. And their story appears in no history book ever written: the Pharaoh's missing signature. Before we go deeper into the mystery, we first need to understand who Graham Hancock is and why his claims have attracted so much attention. Hancock is not an Egyptologist. He does not hold a tenured position at any university. He is a former correspondent for The Economist who has spent more than 3 decades traveling across the world, from submerged ruins off the coast of Japan to ancient temples in Central America, searching for a chapter of human history that he believes has been lost. At the top of his list of misunderstood wonders stands the Great Pyramid. According to the accepted account, the Great Pyramid of Giza was built around 2500 BC for Pharaoh Khufu using copper tools, wooden sledges, and a workforce of 20,000 skilled laborers over a period of more than 20 years. This is the standard version of events repeated in museums, documentaries, and educational programs for more than a century. But Hancock has always asked one question: if this is true, where is the evidence? Inside a monument that, by the conventions of ancient Egypt, should be covered with hieroglyphs, reliefs, dedications, and funerary texts, there is almost nothing. Most Egyptian royal tombs are filled with passages from the Book of the Dead, praises to the gods, carefully carved names of pharaohs, and declarations of royal power. Yet inside the Great Pyramid, not a single line of writing appears on the interior walls. There are no reliefs, no funerary texts, only vast chambers of stone standing in complete silence. The so-called sarcophagus in the king's chamber is little more than a plain granite box. It bears no symbols and no decoration. No mummy, burial treasure, or royal seal has ever been found inside it. So where does the connection to Khufu come from? It comes from only one source: a small number of quarry marks, essentially rough lines of painted writing found inside the relieving chambers above the king's chamber. These marks were discovered in 1837 by Colonel Howard Vyse, a British explorer who used explosives to force his way into chambers that had remained sealed. No independent witness was present at the moment the inscriptions bearing Khufu's name were supposedly found. At the time, Vyse was also locked in a race for fame against a rival explorer, Giovanni Caviglia, who was in danger of surpassing him in the competition for discovery. The controversy did not end in the 19th century. In 2024, the World Scan Project used high-resolution 3D scanning technology to record the quarry marks inside the relieving chambers in exceptional detail. In 2026, researchers from inside the Great Pyramid compared the new scans with the original drawings made by John Shea Paring in 1837 and Alan Rowe in 1931. Their analysis raised serious questions. The historical drawings did not always match the actual positions of the painted marks. Some symbols appeared to be absent when the chambers were first opened, only to emerge in later records. If Vyse and Paring were trying to document the chambers accurately, why did their drawings omit markings that modern technology now shows directly in front of them? Beyond these disputed marks, Khufu's name appears nowhere else on or inside the monument. It is absent from any papyrus describing the construction. It is absent from the outer surface. It is absent from temple reliefs of the same period. Hancock does not claim that Khufu had no connection to the pyramid. His argument is more precise. The only direct evidence linking Khufu to the monument is also one of the most controversial discoveries in the history of Egyptian archaeology. And if the very foundation of the pyramid's identity has been uncertain from the beginning, then the entire story of how it was built may need to be reconsidered, starting with the design itself. A blueprint without an age. Once the layer of identity is stripped away, what remains is even harder to explain. The structure itself displays technical features that seem out of place in the era to which it has been assigned. The Great Pyramid is aligned with true north to within roughly 0.05 degrees. Not magnetic north, which constantly shifts, but geographic north, a direction that today is determined with precision through advanced instruments and satellite data. Somehow this alignment was achieved more than 4,500 years ago with tools believed to have been made only from copper and stone. The pyramid's foundation covers more than 13 acres, roughly the area of 10 football fields. Yet the difference in elevation across the entire base is less than 1 inch. Even with modern laser-guided surveying equipment, achieving that degree of level precision across such an enormous area would remain an extraordinary challenge. The outer limestone casing blocks, most of which were removed over the centuries, and the granite blocks within the monument were fitted so tightly that a razor blade cannot be inserted into many of the joints. Some joints are angular, others curve. The stones do not merely fit together. They interlock, absorbing force and distributing weight in a deliberate way. This is not crude stone stacking. It is complex and sophisticated stone engineering. The accepted account attributes all of this to copper chisels and dolerite pounding stones, but copper is a soft metal far too soft to cut granite efficiently. Experimental archaeologists have attempted to reproduce the process with replicas of ancient tools. The results have been extremely slow and inefficient, and in many cases the tools failed almost immediately when they came into contact with granite. The relationship between the pyramid's height and the length of its base closely approximates pi. The internal geometry of the Grand Gallery and the King's Chamber appears elegant, deliberate, and unmistakably mathematical. The structure has also been claimed to encode knowledge of the equinoxes, the solar year, and even the curvature of the Earth. There is another paradox that Hancock emphasizes. Many pyramids built after the time of Khufu monuments that should have inherited and improved upon the knowledge of earlier generations became unstable, collapsed, or now survive only as barely recognizable heaps of rubble. If the Great Pyramid represented the peak of a gradual technological evolution, why did the level of achievement decline so sharply afterward? That question has no simple answer within the accepted timeline. But stone engineering is only half of the problem. The other half lies in the scale of the logistics, and there the apparent impossibility grows exponentially. The stones that should not have moved. Most of the Great Pyramid was built from limestone with approximately 2.3 million blocks, many weighing between 2 and 15 tons. But the walls and ceiling of the King's Chamber were made from a completely different material, granite. It was harder, heavier, and came from a great distance away. These enormous granite blocks, some weighing as much as 80 tons, nearly the weight of a diesel locomotive, were transported from Aswan, a quarrying region in southern Egypt located more than 500 miles from Giza. Pause for a moment and consider what that would have required. Each block had to be carried upriver along the Nile, dragged inland, and then raised nearly 150 feet into the core of the pyramid. According to the standard account, all of this was accomplished with ropes, wooden sledges, and human strength. The most widely accepted explanation involves ramps. Workers are believed to have built massive earthen ramps or spiraling pathways to haul the stones upward as the pyramid rose. But engineers who have examined this idea have identified a serious problem. Such a ramp may have needed to extend for nearly a mile and could have required more construction material than the pyramid itself. Yet no clear remains of any ramp on that scale have ever been found. Not a single surviving section of this supposedly essential engineering structure can be identified today. Alternative proposals, including pulley systems, levers, and internal ramps, also lack direct archaeological evidence. Then there is the mathematics of the schedule. According to the accepted chronology, the entire monument was completed in about 20 years. A simple calculation suggests that workers would have needed to place one stone every 2.5 minutes, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week continuously for 2 decades. There could be no interruption, no mistakes, and no loss of the structure's extraordinary mathematical consistency. Modern crane operators and stoneworkers have attempted to move and shape granite blocks using replicas of ancient tools. The results have shown extreme difficulty, even with the benefit of modern supporting techniques. Many contemporary engineers have stated publicly that they could not reproduce the construction of the Great Pyramid, using only the tools traditionally assigned to the ancient Egyptians. Hancock's conclusion is direct. The gap between the accepted description and the engineering reality is not merely a missing detail in the theory. To him, it is evidence that the builders possessed technical knowledge that was later lost. But if the monument exceeded the capabilities of the Old Kingdom, then the next question is not only who built it, but when. And the clue is not hidden inside the pyramid. It lies just outside on the weathered body of the Great Sphinx, where water may have left a message that the desert could never erase. What water left behind. At the edge of the Giza Plateau, the Great Sphinx gazes silently across an ocean of sand. Half lion and half human, it was carved directly from a single mass of limestone. According to mainstream Egyptology, the monument was created around 2500 BC during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu. Graham Hancock believes that date is wrong, And the evidence he argues does not come from ancient texts or buried artifacts. It comes from the surface of the stone itself. During the 1990s, Dr. Robert Schoch, a geologist at Boston University, asked a question that few archaeologists had considered. He examined the Sphinx not simply as a historical monument, but as a geological formation, studying the patterns of erosion according to the principles of weathering. What he found caused a storm of controversy. The limestone surrounding the Sphinx contains deep vertical fissures, a pattern completely different from the horizontal abrasion normally produced by wind and blowing sand. According to Schoch, this vertical erosion is characteristic of prolonged and heavy rainfall. Rainwater flows downward under gravity, carving deep channels into exposed stone. Such weathering could not have developed under the desert conditions that have dominated Egypt for thousands of years. The last time the Giza region received enough rainfall to produce erosion on this scale was near the end of the Pleistocene, roughly 10,000 to 12,000 years ago. In other words, the origins of the Sphinx might extend as far back as 10,500 BC. That date would change everything. If the Sphinx is truly that ancient, it would not merely predate the pyramids according to the accepted chronology. It would predate the entire dynastic age of Egypt. This would mean that an organized society with the technical ability to carve an enormous monument from solid bedrock existed long before conventional history says civilization had truly begun. Hancock adopted Schoch's findings and connected them to a much broader period of upheaval known as the Younger Dryas. Around 12,800 years ago, Earth suddenly returned to colder conditions after beginning to warm at the end of the Ice Age. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis proposes that a comet or a fragmented group of cosmic objects may have triggered this reversal and devastated early human cultures across the planet. In 2025, a study led by Christopher Moore of the University of South Carolina and published in PLOS-1 reported extraterrestrial metal dust, iron, and silicon microspherules and unusually high levels of platinum in seafloor sediments from Baffin Bay near Greenland. The findings were presented as possible evidence of an ancient cosmic impact and were initially regarded by supporters as an important breakthrough. However, PLOS-1 retracted the paper in February 2026 following concerns about its methodology, the calibration of radiometric dates and citation practices. This means the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis remains an open debate. It is not an established fact, but neither has every version of the idea been conclusively eliminated. The Younger Dryas climate event itself is real and is widely documented in the geological record. What caused it remains unresolved. For Hancock, however, the central issue is not the exact mechanism behind the catastrophe. It is the timing. If the Sphinx dates from before or during the Younger Dryas, it may represent one of the final surviving monuments of a civilization later erased by time and climatic upheaval. And if that possibility is correct, then a strange alignment in the sky becomes much harder to ignore. A star map in stone. The three pyramids of Giza do not stand in a perfectly straight line. The third pyramid, the smallest of the group, is positioned slightly to one side. For centuries, this detail was dismissed as a construction irregularity or a response to the natural landscape. Few believed it carried any deeper meaning. Then Robert Bauval looked toward the sky. Bauval noticed that the arrangement of the three pyramids closely resembles the positions of the three stars in Orion's belt, a constellation associated by the ancient Egyptians with Osiris, ruler of the afterlife. The smallest pyramid is offset from the others in much the same way that the faintest star in Orion's belt sits slightly outside the line formed by the other two. The geometric resemblance was striking enough, but Bauval went further. He used astronomical software to calculate precession, the slow movement of Earth's rotational axis that alters the apparent positions of the stars over a cycle lasting roughly 26,000 years. His question was simple. At what point in the past would Orion's belt have appeared in the position that most precisely matched the layout of Giza? His answer was approximately 10,500 BC. That date almost perfectly overlaps with the age proposed by Schoch based on the evidence of water erosion around the Sphinx. Two completely different lines of investigation, one geological and the other astronomical, appeared to point toward the same distant period. Hancock sees this convergence as something greater than coincidence. He argues that the Giza Plateau was not merely a ceremonial complex, it was a celestial design, a landscape deliberately aligned with the heavens to encode a specific moment in astronomical history. And this pattern may not be limited to Egypt. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, which has been securely dated to at least 11,600 years ago, thousands of years earlier than any monumental stone complex previously known, has also been interpreted as containing possible alignments with constellations. Teotihuacan in Mexico and Angkor Wat in Cambodia have likewise been associated with celestial patterns. These monuments belong to cultures believed to have had no contact with one another. They were separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years, yet they appear to share a similar geometric language. As Hancock describes them, these structures are messages written in stone. They were not recorded in ink or carved as sentences across a wall. They were traced among the stars by people who understood geometry, recognized the precession of the equinoxes, and chose to mark their existence by aligning the earth with the sky. But if Giza truly contains an ancient message that has never been fully decoded, then something remarkable has begun to happen. Modern technology is finally learning to see through the stone of the Great Pyramid, and what it has uncovered appears to be more tightly controlled than ever before. The chambers no one is allowed to enter. In 2017, the International Scan Pyramids Project announced a discovery in the journal Nature that stunned the archaeological world. Using muon tomography, a technique that relies on muons from cosmic rays, subatomic particles that constantly strike the surface of Earth pass through stone and are absorbed at different rates depending on the density of the material. Researchers detected an enormous void above the Grand Gallery. The space measures at least 98 feet in length and has a cross-section comparable to the Grand Gallery itself. It is large enough to contain a small passenger aircraft. This was the first major internal structure discovered inside the Great Pyramid since the 19th century. No camera has entered it. No excavation has taken place. The void exists, but its purpose and contents remain unknown. In 2023, the project confirmed another corridor behind the northern face of the pyramid. It is approximately 30 feet long, about 6.5 feet wide, and 6.5 feet high. The passage ends at two large limestone slabs. What lies behind them remains a mystery. Near the end of 2025, Zahi Hawass, perhaps the most famous Egyptologist in the world and also one of the most criticized for his control over access to archaeological sites, announced at the Sharjah International Book Fair that his team had identified a passage extending 98 feet inside the pyramid. Robots had reached and cleared openings that had previously been inaccessible to humans. Hawass said the results would be revealed in 2026 and described the discovery as something that would add a new chapter to the history of the pharaohs. But he did not reveal what lay beyond the stone door. At the same time, another story was unfolding beneath the ground. In March 2025, a team led by Corrado Malanga of the University of Pisa and Filippo Biondi claimed to have used satellite-based synthetic aperture radar, known as SAR, to detect a vast system of underground structures beneath the Giza Plateau. According to their description, the network included spiraling vertical shafts descending more than 100 feet into the earth and converging on cubic structures measuring approximately 262 feet by 262 feet. If accurate, the system would be many times larger than anything previously discovered at Giza. The claim immediately triggered intense controversy. It was presented at a press conference rather than published through scientific peer review. Many archaeologists and physicists questioned whether SAR technology could penetrate bedrock to such depths. The method depends on analyzing tiny movements produced by background seismic waves, rather than creating a direct image like an X-ray. This means the results rely heavily on mathematical models and may mistake noise for genuine structures. Dr. Hussein Abdelbasir, director of the Antiquities Museum at the Bibliotheca Alexandrina, described the claims made by Malanga and Biondi as falling within the realm of exaggeration and deception. Yet even if the accuracy of each individual claim remains uncertain, the larger pattern is difficult to ignore. Technology continues to reveal previously unknown spaces within and beneath Giza, including voids, corridors, and possible structures, while access, excavation, and publication remain tightly restricted. This pattern is not new. In 1993, German engineer Rudolf Gantenbrink sent the robot Upuaut 2 into the narrow shafts inside the pyramid and discovered a sealed door deep within the structure. Instead of being allowed to continue his investigation, Gantenbrink was removed from the project. Control passed to the Egyptian authorities. More than 30 years later, the mystery of that door remains unresolved. Hancock does not claim to know exactly what lies beyond the unopened doors or inside the unexplored voids, but he believes the pattern itself deserves examination. Discovery followed by silence, promises followed by delays, access restricted to a small number of individuals. None of this proves the existence of a conspiracy, but it does show that the story of Giza is far from complete and that anyone claiming to understand the monument fully may be speaking too soon. While the stone doors remain closed, Hancock argues that the greatest answer may not lie behind any single wall. It may be found in the global picture that emerges when every piece of evidence is placed together. The ghosts who built the world. Graham Hancock has spent most of his career assembling these fragments into a single picture, and that picture leads to a conclusion he knows will infuriate mainstream archaeology. The connection to Khufu rests on uncertain foundations. The only direct evidence linking his name to the pyramid consists of controversial painted marks inside the relieving chambers. The stonework appears to exceed the capabilities of copper tools. No proven method explains how 80-ton granite blocks were transported across 500 miles. The geology of the Sphinx suggests a possible date near 10,500 BC. The astronomical alignment with Orion's belt points toward the same distant period. Modern technology continues to reveal hidden spaces that remained unknown for thousands of years. According to Hancock, all of this leads toward one conclusion. The Great Pyramid was not originally a product of Egypt's Old Kingdom. It was built by an advanced civilization that existed before the dynastic age and was destroyed during a period of global climatic upheaval around 12,800 years ago during the Younger Dryas. The later pharaohs merely inherited, restored, and claimed ownership of a monument that was already ancient. The civilizations celebrated for building the wonders of Egypt may have been the heir, not the creator. Hancock calls the true builders the magicians of the gods. He does not mean extraterrestrials or supernatural beings. He means human architects, astronomers, and master navigators made of flesh and blood. They belong to an age that recorded history has forgotten. He believes that when their civilization collapsed, survivors carried fragments of their knowledge across the world, planting the first seeds of the ancient cultures that later emerged. The indirect evidence for this idea, he argues, is scattered across several continents. Pyramid structures are not found only in Egypt. They appear from the Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan in Mexico to Angkor Wat in Cambodia, and from Meroe in Sudan to the coastal pyramids of Peru. These include sites such as Banduria, Caral, Penico, and Aspero, which Hancock personally investigated while researching a new book expected to be published in 2027. Then there is Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, securely dated thousands of years earlier than any previously known monumental stone sanctuary. It remains one of the strongest pieces of evidence that large-scale stone architecture existed deep in prehistory. Hancock argues that these monuments share celestial alignments, mathematical constants, and similar architectural features, even though they were created by communities believed to have had no contact with one another. They were separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years. Hancock does not call this coincidence. He calls it a fingerprint, the same hand, the same body of knowledge echoing across time and space. He does not claim that his theory has been proven beyond doubt. During an interview with Stephen Bartlett on the Diary of a CEO in June 2026, Hancock stated, "I am here to communicate the possibility that a major forgotten chapter exists in the human story. I am talking about a lost civilization." He acknowledged that his hypothesis still requires more evidence and further research. But he argues that the combined weight of the evidence from geology, astronomy, and architecture to the continuing discoveries made by tightly controlled modern technology forms a case that mainstream academia has not answered adequately. Critics dismiss the idea, he says, but they do not explain the anomalies. Hancock's final message is not directed only toward the past. It is also a warning for the present. If an advanced civilization once existed and was then almost completely erased by natural catastrophe, the assumption that modern humanity represents the first and only peak of intelligence on this planet may not simply be wrong, it may be dangerous. From Graham Hancock's perspective, the Great Pyramid is not a tomb. It is not a monument to the power or vanity of any pharaoh. It is a time capsule, a message written in stone and designed to outlast floods, wars, and even memory itself. And that message is still waiting to be decoded.